Welcome everybody. First things first, as always, if I could just get a quick audio visual check, please. Let me know you can see my charts clearly and you can hear me all right. How are you all doing this fine day wherever you are? I want to quickly discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly, as always, with the current Bitcoin chart. And guys, with tensions climbing in the Middle East and the threat of war escalations, the market has been dumping a little bit. To be honest, with or without war, this really shouldn't have come as too much of a surprise for those of you who have been tuning into my recent streams, and especially those of you in my Telegram, because I've been warning about the fact that basically we're at macro resistance either way, right? I've been warning about this for, well, months at this time. I mean, really, that weekly chart I was warning about since Christmas, and it unfortunately takes a long time for those setups to play out because it's a long time frame. I am in a couple beautiful shorts. Hopefully those of you guys in the Telegram were able to catch those. I opened those before everyone was experts on the war, due to nothing other than typical price action, you guys. So please do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button if you appreciate my level-headed approach, because guys, I took these trade setups based on back-tested chart setups. And before you say it wouldn't have played out that way without war escalations, to be fair, you could be right. However, anytime I've done any back testing, I have not once gone back to that day and looked at what the headlines were reading. I simply have a set of rules based on chart structure. I have never back tested headlines or tweets. In my opinion, back testing is just so important, guys, in keeping a level head in the game of trading, because all you're really doing is playing probabilities. When it comes to trading, you're playing probabilities. So this doesn't mean that your setup is always going to work out, but at least you have an idea of what your odds are and you have proper invalidations in mind and that sort of thing. Because guys, always have a backup plan, because no matter how certain you are of something, there's still always a good chance that you are wrong. To be clear, this goes for me as well. And with that, it's all good, it looks like. So thank you very much, guys. Let's hop right into it. So guys, just want to start out by looking at Bitcoin here on the 5-minute chart. A lot of you guys may actually still be in the long that I posted about this morning based on this STUBER fib setup. I had the remaining half of my position stopped at break even. I updated my risk a little bit, and you know what, after taking some profits at my first two targets, guys, this is the entry perfectly at the 786, and we hit my first two targets very quickly and then pulled back. And like I said, I'm not in that position anymore. I'm in a couple beautiful shorts, however, from up higher. And basically, yeah, I still have those running, and I still have my bearish bias that I've had for quite some time, but I am still willing to play those long setups, right? If I feel like there's a easy setup where I can make a few bucks real quick and then I can get rid of my risk, then so be it. Those of you in my Telegram, you'll know that I not only mentioned Bitcoin long setup, but I also talked about a hype setup, and that's kind of the same thing. I hit my first couple take profits. After that, it was stopped at break even. But I just want to start out by basically going back to the weekly chart, you guys. I want to start zoomed out because it's easier to start zoomed out, get an overall feel, and then zoom our way in. And guys, I know that it always feels like this cycle is going to be different. It always feels like, you know, there's always bullish stuff happening and the charts always look best at resistance. Okay, the markets always look the strongest at resistance, just like they always look weakest at support. And everybody knows you're supposed to buy support and sell resistance. But when the time actually comes, it's very hard to grasp your emotions in such a way. But this is just what I mean by back testing. And I mean, guys, this chart setup, I've back tested the shit out of this pattern, this very specific RSI divergence, right? It's not just any divergence. It's when I'm looking for the bearish ones with a double top type of setup. I'm looking for an overbought conditions RSI going back down to that 70 level with some sort of a double top. And basically what that outlines is we have a double top. We couldn't break this resistance last time when we had significantly more strength. So why would we break it again with significantly less strength? Just like what we have going on right now, right? We came back up to this macro resistance, and then we have significantly less strength. We're down from overbought down towards the 70 level. And we already had this play out once, right? We got a 30% correction from this very small one that we had up here. We had that same divergence, but on a much smaller scale. And, you know, just quite often we end up seeing this play out to be a usually at least a 30% correction. So yeah, so far we've dumped about 10% from our highs with this signal. Let's just go from our red dotted line here. Let's go from our highs and where we bottomed, which it was actually a few weeks ago, but it was only about a 10% move to the downside. So in my opinion, I still think that there's a lot of room to go to the downside. Obviously, like I said earlier at the start there, I can be wrong as well, right? That's why we have invalidations. That's why we have back testing. But you guys, I've been warning about this since we were down here. I said, even if we take out this micro resistance on the longer time frames, I know it's actually quite large resistance, that 89K level. But basically that was our micro trend, right? We had low, lower, low. That was the lower high on the trend. We broke that. At that point, I was saying, watch out if we get this divergence, if we see the RSI around 70 while we are in double top territory, that's going to be a huge red flag for me. This had nothing to do with the war for me. This had everything to do with a back-tested strategy that I've back-tested the shit out of on the weekly chart, the daily chart, and the 4-hour chart. And that's why I'm able to keep a level head and why I never did have that FOMO up at all-time highs. In fact, I was selling some spot up here and also diversifying into other assets. Like there was some micro caps I was talking about that have actually been performing way better than Bitcoin. So just things like that. So I don't think, I'm not necessarily saying we have to be in a bear market right now, but just understand that this is the exact same setup we had back at the top of last market cycle. The timing also works out quite well as far as this momentum indicator, the MDX Wave Master indicator. I talk about this quite often in these streams, that on the monthly, anytime we've got these big crosses, it has been a significant move. And just notice how, yeah, each cycle tends to get a little bit longer, but does it make sense that, we have already pumped just as long as we did last cycle? A lot of people are saying, well, due to the halving dates and how long, however many days it's been, whatever. Obviously, you can always find some sort of evidence to back up your own bias. And that goes for me as well. I want to be real with you guys. I could absolutely be wrong about this. Just because this indicator has played out 100% of the time so far doesn't mean that it has to play out again, right? Anything can change. If we start staircasing higher, then so be it. I will be a moon boy just like the next guy. But as it stands, we have these big red flags on the weekly, and I just can't shake that feeling. Even if it's just going to be short-lived like this one back here. I mean, even a 30% correction to the downside, that's a very serious move in my opinion. Yeah, eventually, just like back here, yeah, we got a 30% correction to the downside. Eventually we reverse to the upside. So people say, oh, you were wrong about that. No, we got a very big move to the downside. I don't care if you don't consider a 30% correction on Bitcoin to be a big move, then whatever. Everyone has their own risk appetite, right? But I consider it at least a big swing. And so, the fact that we see those large moves and 30% generally being the smaller ones, actually 20 was the smallest one that I saw back here. But very large moves to the downside, even though they don't look like too much on the weekly logarithmic chart, right? So it is what it is. I mean, I'm happy to be wrong about this. I would love to see the price go absolutely parabolic. I'm an investor and a trader, so I treat my investments and my trading accounts very differently. Like I said, I sold some of my spot, but I still hold a healthy amount of crypto. And if we go parabolic, I can also always just buy back in if we break this resistance. We invalidate my bearish theory, I can buy back in and consider it. I sold some of my spot around 110. My invalidation would be a little above 115. So consider it a 5% loss if that happens. Whereas a lot of people are so scared to miss that 5% move that they're willing to possibly, take on a whole bear market just because they're scared to miss that 5%. Because, if we are going to go parabolic, if we are going to staircase higher, I can always get back into the market, right? And like I said, I still hold most of it. It's just that I've been taking a little bit of profits and moving things around a little bit. That's totally fine. But yeah, so things just generally don't look that great. I just want to share this because this just made me laugh the other day at just kind of scrolling through my Twitter, and I ended up seeing this. But on January 17th, I warned that, are you ready to get wrecked, right? January 17th, the 20th came in and, we got that swing fail. I was actually looking at more of a STUBER setup. we ended up going a little higher, but we never came close to breaking my 115 invalidation. So either way, whether you want to look at it as a swing fail or a STUBER fib, either way, I was warning that, people are about to get wrecked, and people absolutely got wrecked. And then on May 23rd, I was warning about the same thing because we got another swing fail from this level back here. So again, happy to be wrong about this, but just the fact that, rather than being one of those people who are just trying to shill you the top and trying to get you to pump my bags kind of a thing, I just don't think retail is pumping the bags anymore, period. But this is just, looking at resistance for what it is rather than FOMOing in at resistance. Like I said, people love FOMOing into resistance and buying resistance, just like they love selling support when they get scared, and so on and so on. So, yeah, basically at this point, that's where our weekly was starting to get into this double top bearish divergence territory. And that's why I tweeted that. And you know what? So far, yeah, I still have my concerns about this chart. Again, if we end up staircasing higher, so be it. It's just that right now there's a lot of red flags, right? And guys, I mean, for those of you who are interested in trading the charts, just trading based on the charts, period, rather than tweets and fundamentals and that sort of thing, and just kind of want to stay one step ahead of the markets based entirely on price action and price structure, no emotions attached, and you want more of my thoughts on the market in general, some of my trade setup ideas and that sort of thing, do yourselves a favor and get into my Telegram channel by scanning the QR code or clicking the link in the description down below, following the steps there. But guys, this is just what I mean. I was mentioning earlier that I was sharing in my Telegram a couple of things. I mean, I was pointing out again, right? Everyone was getting, and I talk about this all the time, you're starting to see so many bullish tweets and people saying, oh, that was a bear trap down there, et cetera, et cetera. And those tweets weren't coming out until we got into resistance. You start seeing the FOMO, you start seeing the excitement at resistance, which just happened to be a perfect STUBER fib setup, and we absolutely nuked from there. And again, not just being a perma bear here, I did also mention in the Telegram when I started to hedge long, and it played out beautifully, right? So I took some profits. I'm not in that trade anymore, obviously. Ended up getting another STUBER fib, absolutely nuked to the downside. So I'm still in a quarter of both of those big shorts there. But on top of that, guys, again, playing both sides, right? I'm a trader. I don't really care. I'm just looking at one trade setup at a time. But I was also warning that, hey, we've actually broke some structure. This was last night. We actually broke some structure. So at that point, I wasn't interested in catching the knife at the bottom, right? Hopefully you guys can see this. I wasn't interested in just swinging at a YOLO long down here. But after we broke a bunch of resistance like that, that's where I was starting to look for the pullback. And we absolutely got that this morning. I warned about it right as we were approaching that. Very quickly hit my first target, my second target. And that's the thing, guys. There was no emotions attached. In fact, I was bearish at the time. It's just that there was a bullish setup. So I took it. And that's what I aim to teach in the Telegram, is just kind of keeping your emotions at bay and playing chart structure for what it is. It really doesn't matter what your analysis or your predictions are. What matters is your execution of those trade setups, you guys. And as mentioned, hype as well, I was talking about looking for the STUBER fib on the 4 hour. We ended up pulling back into it, getting a 5-minute STUBER out of that. So a STUBER on a STUBER, stubception, as some of us call it. And yeah, had a nice setup out of that. So took some profits before carrying on. And guys, my partners at BloFin are currently also giving those of you who are signed up on BloFin under me, those of you who are in the Telegram, etc. You guys are all qualified, new and existing people in my Telegram are all have this promo going on for another week or so. So if that interests you, do yourselves a favor and take advantage of that. But yeah, guys, with that being said, I mean, I do want to take a look at hype because this has been one of my favorite altcoins for the past several months. I have concerns about what's happening with this chart right now. Now, to be fair, we could be holding support something like this. You know, we've just tested this STUBER fib, if you want to call it that. The thing is, we did already lose a potential uptrend, because after this high, and I know this is where I get into micro analyzing, but we had this slightly higher high and another higher high, we lost that structure. So we actually ended up flipping that support into resistance perfectly and have been in a downtrend ever since. So it hasn't been long, to be fair, but this is a 4-hour chart. And since we ended up breaking this structure, you can see that we've been on a little downward spiral. So we're going to have to see what happens there. I don't want to YOLO into a long at this point, even though I think that there's a good chance we're at this support level, especially with such a strong uptrend for this. I do just want to be a little bit careful. The daily actually, so the daily still has that, right? Still has that structure where we have this high, slightly higher high. We did not lose this high or low yet. So technically, as long as the daily is staying above our support here, I'm going to say just around 37 US dollars, a little bit of wiggle room there. As long as hype is staying above that level, I think it's still in good shape. If we start to lose that, that's where I'd be a little more interested in, getting some sort of a retrace to short into. If we end up breaking that support level, that's where I would want to see a retrace, and where everyone always gets excited, right, at resistance on the retest, right? That's where I would be looking for my short in that sort of situation. But we don't have that structure yet. We still have the bulls being favorable in this, in my opinion. I've actually been saying for quite a while now, I'm significantly more bullish on something like hype, even Ethereum, stuff like that, than I am with Bitcoin, just because so many altcoins have kind of just started breaking out of their downtrends and have not got to their macro resistance, whereas Bitcoin's actually at its macro resistance already. So, I mean, I'm just kind of playing one chart at a time at this point, treating everything as their own, because even if Bitcoin has topped, and guys, that's a very big if. I want to be clear about that. It's a very big if that Bitcoin may have topped, even if it's temporary. Just that typically at near the ending phases of market cycles, you will see that altcoins have their little finale hurrah. They have their little finale run, while Bitcoin either sells off or just consolidates sideways, whatever. So that's something that I would be open to the idea of, that even if Bitcoin corrects, that maybe it's not necessarily the end of the bull market, but it could be coming to the end of Bitcoin. Even if Bitcoin ends up going higher, I really just don't think it's going to go too much further before the end of the cycle. Like I said, from a timing perspective, from a divergence perspective, there's so many things favoring the bears. But again, very happy to be wrong on that, and still not overly bearish on altcoins, even though obviously while Bitcoin is getting hammered on, altcoins are going to get hammered on even harder. But it's more so looking with, Bitcoin's finding support, and now altcoins end up hitting, let's say, their STUBER fibs or whatever, and they get much more aggressive recoveries, right? And that's what I'm kind of interested in as far as the long side of things goes right now. So as far as Bitcoin goes, I'm more so favoring the shorts. But as far as altcoins go, I'm more so looking at that long exposure. So we're going to have to see what happens. Ethereum, I just mapped out a couple random diagonal lines here, you guys. I know not everybody likes diagonal trend lines. I like them to be very accurate, pinpoint touches, basically with their wicks and everything. So these are the two I currently have going. Whether or not we test them, your guess is as good as mine. We're just going to have to see if we end up testing them, get some sort of a swing fail, just some sort of a reaction off one of these. It's very possible we don't even get that, right? Because really just looking at Ethereum here, if we want to say this is our higher low, I mean, I'm more so giving wiggle room, so I'm going to the lowest part of that range there. But even if we go from this low here, just looking at where we ended up finding support here, I mean, it was a perfect STUBER fib right here, filled the 886 absolutely perfectly. But the first target has already been hit. And you guys know, for those of you who have been in these streams quite often, you know that I much prefer the first time off those STUBER fib setups, just because they're so often tested at least once, even if they're not going to hold forever. They so often get tested once where you end up hitting some of those targets, just like in this case. before continuing to the dump. And I mean, to be fair, support is support until it's broken. So it could just take off from here. I would love to see that because that would be great for the altcoin market. Generally speaking, when Ethereum is happy, most of the market is very excited at that point, right? So I would love to see Ethereum do that. And also, as I was talking about, we are nowhere near macro resistance yet. So I would still love to see Ethereum come up to a much higher resistance level, even somewhere around 3,500, right? That seems a little ridiculous at this point, but as far as an actual large swing on the 4-hour here, where the swing started from for the downside, that's going from 4,100 US dollars. So, and that's going all the way back to December. So, I mean, that's a very large range. And that's kind of why I'm still looking for those opportunities to try and get into a scalp long on my altcoin setups. And then if part of the position can run, like I said, with my hype long last night, I was really hoping the other half would run. It didn't. It was still a profitable trade, but I was hoping that it would have just absolutely taken off. Obviously, that would have been fantastic, but it never happened. But that's a good thing about being a trader. I say it often, being a trader or a weatherman, you can be wrong and you can still make money. So that's the important part, is protecting yourself, right? So Ethereum at this point, not looking so bad, in my opinion, just because we haven't actually lost this range support around, I'll even give it, let's call it 2,310 US dollars. If we end up losing that level, we'll have to see if we can find any support off one of these diagonal trend lines. If not, that's where I would start looking for a much bigger fib pull. And I would be going from basically the bottom of where Ethereum bottomed so far, looking for something like this. Obviously does not need to happen, because when I'm looking for these trade setups, it doesn't mean the price has to go there. It just means if the price does go there, I have a plan, right? I'm ready to start looking for longs in this pocket if we actually go there. So that's kind of my plan with Ethereum at this point. If we start staircasing higher, I notice something on a 5-minute or something like that, yeah, I would love to start playing longs on Ethereum again. But for now, mostly focused on Bitcoin and mostly focused on shorting. It's just like I said, we did get this nice STUBER fib here. It's already played out once. So that may be all the bulls kind of had in retaliation to the bears there. But we're going to have to see, right? You guys know I'm not a fundamental guy, so I'm not trading based on tweets or headlines based around, war escalations and stuff like that. However, if those fundamentals do line up with the charts, I do feel different about it. I'm not going to try and find things in the charts because of headlines, but I look at charts first. And if I'm holding on to part of a position, like right now, holding on to a quarter of both of my short positions, does it make sense to hold on to them at this point? I think yes, because there is potential for the weekly chart to really take off. And as well, there's so many possibilities of, something happening fundamentally right now that helps continue push that. Like I said, I'm never going to trade based solely on tweets or fundamentals or headlines or anything. However, I'll at least consider them, especially for this stage of the cycle, right? The fact that I think we're getting near the end of a cycle, well, what better way to end up pushing the price significantly lower than a massive global event like that? Even if it's short-lived and it gets, things, get settled in a timely manner, then fantastic. But that doesn't mean we can't still get some sort of a crazy sell-off. For COVID, for example, it wasn't the end. It wasn't a bear market, but we got a bear market size move. And I'm not saying that has to happen again. I'm just saying that there's a lot of red flags that at least avoid me from having FOMO at resistance, right? You won't see me being that guy who's opening big longs right into resistance, right? Like some people opening massive several hundred millions or actually $billion longs right into resistance and then blaming corruption. Well, yeah, of course the market makers are holding that level. That's how we trade. We rely on market makers and they help make things predictable, if anything. And that's exactly why I've been warning about this setup. So Bitcoin on the 5-minute, I want to check on the 4-hour here. I want to see what the trend master indicator is doing. I'm going to remove all my drawings. This was something that caught my eye the other day, and then again this morning, was that you guys know I often talk about the MDX trend master indicator. One way that I like to use this indicator, it's not each individual signal, but it's noticing when they start trending in a certain direction. Now, this one is a little bit messy because technically we still have higher trending buy signals and we have lower trending sell signals. However, this was the first little warning that had been fired since we bottomed around 75K or whatever it was, right? The fact that we got a sell signal followed by a lower sell signal, that gives me great concern with the markets. And then the fact that we got another lower sell signal here. Basically, the way I would treat this is this last sell signal was printed from basically pivoting here around 109,000 US dollars. That's the pivot point that, from a bearish perspective, I wouldn't really expect the price to go above that, because at that point, the trending lower sell signals would be broken. And I think at that point that, hey, the bulls are making another push for it. So we're going to have to see what happens there. But so far, this is, again, it's just a big red flag on my radar. It doesn't mean that we have to start a bear market or anything like that, but it's absolutely reason to take caution, in my opinion, especially with everything going on, like I was talking about. The 5-minute, I want to take a look at the same indicator, the trend master indicator. So again, notice we have a buy signal. It's a lower buy signal. Just like even this lower sell signal, right? When we got this lower sell signal here, that would have been a beautiful entry. Yeah, it was short-lived, but it's a 5-minute chart. That would have been a beautiful scalp on the 5-minute. That was a nice move. And the fact that we have a lower buy signal right now, wouldn't be all too surprised to see another lower sell come into play. But I know not everyone has these indicators. If you are interested, there is a discount in the description down below, a 10% discount on those. But I use them every day, but I know not everybody wants to pay for indicators. So whatever, this is something that I am watching for now. But it's not so much that I want to take a new short at this time, but I also don't want to take a new long at this point, because we are trading closer to the resistance of this channel or this range. Because if this is how I have my fibs pulled, you guys, this is the range, right? This is the bottom of my range. This is the top of my range. Until this range breaks, at that point, we can start looking for a new fib pull, because we will have new confirmed pivot points and we'll have some structure broken. And before I pull my fibs, I like to have those structure breaks so that there's at least you can play the direction that momentum is favoring based on which way the structure is broken, right? So that's why I'm not just pulling fibs from random points. I actually have them pulled from proper pivot points, because like here, for example, we obviously broke a bunch of structure here, right? We had lows here. We actually had even a micro one there. So whether you want to say we broke that structure, we broke that structure, we broke that structure, we broke this structure, there was so many resistance levels on that downtrend, so many micro lower highs that we broke. And that's why I was looking for that pullback. But like I said, it's already played out. People were getting scared at support as normal. That's where I took my long. And from there, we have to see. But I'm still, for everything I've been ranting about for the last 5 or 10 minutes here, yeah, I'm just still favoring the bearish side of things. Again, I'm very happy to be wrong with all these theories. And honestly, it's okay to be invalidated, right? That's why every trade setup, I always have a stop loss. I always have levels in mind. I always have my take profits set as soon as I enter my positions and that sort of stuff. So again, guys, if that is something that interests you and you just kind of want to know more examples of STUBER fib pulls, more how I look at microstructure and how I look at structure in general, and just kind of keeping a level head and, you know, trading the charts rather than what's actually going on in the world. Because I think, guys, it's so hard to keep a level head if you're actually following that. I purposely ignore speeches. I ignore everything, fingers in my ears, eyes on the charts. That's how I trade. I don't really care what's going on around me other than that, from a trading perspective, obviously. Um, how are you all feeling about the markets anyways? I will catch up on the chat here in a sec. How are you all feeling about crypto? Do you think it's over? Do you think we are about to moon to new all-time highs? How is everybody feeling? Good to see a lot of familiar faces in here. That means you guys obviously like to hear what I say sometimes. So much appreciated. Love having you guys here. Thank you for joining me. Again, if you guys do appreciate my level-headed approach on the charts, you like my analysis, you appreciate the Telegram channel, anything like that, please do me a favor, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss these live streams. Brian, good to see you here. Thank you for joining once again. Ramos says, I believe it's going to rise soon, possibly reaching 120K. You know what? Bring it on. I would love to see it. I still have a feeling we are not going to break 115K. But that being said, if we do go higher, I mean, that's going to be just another green light for the altcoin market. And that would make me giggly. I would love to see it. Don't forget about hype, Adrian. I will get on hype again, or I already looked at hype, but I will zoom in a little bit. Rage Yeti, this time is different. Alts are worse than bear market levels. Daily exchange volume is at yearly lows. Just a Bitcoin-led rally fueled by Sailor. Retail gone. Honestly, I don't agree. I don't disagree with you. You know, everybody was saying at the start of this cycle, oh, this cycle's going to be different. This cycle's going to be different. I 100% agree. And I've been saying this in a lot of my recent streams, is that I think this cycle, actually, I've been saying this for probably a year now, that I did think this cycle was going to be significantly different. One of the reasons is because of the altcoin market is absolutely, I mean, it's ridiculous. There is millions and millions of altcoins being created now. It's ridiculous. Previous cycles, you could just buy and hold anything, but there's not enough retail in the game to pump everything anymore, because there's just too many things. And, you know, the bigger players that get involved with the space, it's going to bring volatility down. The bigger players are going to tame the crypto market compared to what we're used to. I mean, when I started trading Bitcoin, I mean, it would trade 40% in a day often. And now it's more so like 5% is a big day. You know, it's a lot different. And I think so many people got excited about meme coin season. A lot of people got wrecked in all those meme coins that were happening, especially on the Solana network. A lot of degenerate trash on there. And guys, I love it, right? Like I love trading those as well. I spot trade a lot of micro caps there. That's totally fine. It's fun, but it's recipe for retail to get absolutely destroyed in the market. And I agree with you. I think a lot of retail got wrecked, especially, and I don't care where you stand politically. I don't have a screenshot ready. However, I did take one of, you know, Trump's crypto wallet, and basically showing how much money the day that Trump token topped, the amount of Bitcoin and Ethereum that he accumulated, and that exited the market completely less than a couple weeks later. I mean, that was a lot of retail money that got yanked right out of the market. It was actually around 400 million, if I'm not correct, or if I'm not mistaken, rather. So, you know, just those few things, like, yeah, 400 million to the big players, that's not a ton. However, $400 million of retail degen altcoin money, that's a big chunk of it, right? That's, or maybe not a huge chunk of it, but it is a large chunk of money. So I agree that I think a lot of retail has got wrecked this cycle, and it's very different from previous market cycles. Brian says, I can't see past 120 for this cycle. Honestly, I don't either. Like I said, 115K is kind of, I think we've topped already. If we haven't, I really still don't really think we're going to break 115, but I'm so happy to be wrong about that. Yeah, 115K max, 118K max. So the one thing that does have me a little concerned is when I first started throwing around my bearish theories, a lot of people were upset with me. A lot of people were telling me how wrong I was, stuff like that. Whereas now a lot more people are starting to agree with me. And also with the weekly chart, I'm going to erase a few things here. Just to make it a little easier to read here without getting distracted, is, guys, this previous market cycle, the top looked basically identical to what we have right now. Like it's for people to say how bullish this chart is when it looks identical to the previous market cycle. I mean, the same bearish divergence, overextended bearish divergence, the exact one that I love to see with a double top. Same thing we have right now, right? We even had that very quick recovery right into that resistance where everyone started celebrating. I remember that so clear when we were at these levels, and I was one of them, right? And that's why I'm sticking to my charts this time rather than letting my emotions get the best of me. Is, this feels very, very similar to how I felt. Well, not how I felt, how the market felt back there. And that just kind of, my one thing going for this is that it can't possibly be that freaking easy, can it? That we get the exact same market cycle top as last cycle. That is a big red flag towards myself, honestly, is, I don't know if they would make it that easy. But that being said, so far, it's there until it's proven invalidated, right? So maybe it's just the fact that, hey, we have bigger players in the space. They look for those liquidity grabs going slightly above all-time highs. Let me actually, because here's another way I want to look at this. If we look at this double top here, or call it a STUBER fib, either way, right? I was mentioning that, hey, we had a swing fail there. Notice that we never did break the STUBER fib, right? We broke our support here, ended up going for that retest, just like any short setup that I take on the 5-minute or the 4-hour, the 1-hour, anything. We have that on the weekly there. We tested this resistance pocket for 5 weeks before dumping. So a lot of people asking me, like, Stu, why haven't we dumped yet if it's so bearish? Well, we're coming on to week 5 right now. So, I mean, generally speaking, market cycles actually get a little slower. So maybe we even hang out here for another week or two. We'll see. But moral of the story is this STUBER fib never got invalidated. We never broke the 115. We did, however, get that liquidity grab just above our previous all-time high, right? So liquidity, check. Let's look at our current market structure, and we very much so have the same thing, right? We got our swing fail. We grabbed the liquidity just above our all-time highs. We did not break the 115. We have that same RSI divergence, as I mentioned. There's just a lot of similarities. So even if this isn't going to be the cycle top, if it's going to be different this time, at the very least, I cannot be bullish on this chart. I can be cautious, and I can be happy to be wrong about my bearish theories. Like I said earlier, when I'm taking trade setups, I'm setting my take profits based on the range that I'm pulling my fib on. I'm not actually leverage trading based on the weekly chart. I'm more so trading the 5-minute and the 1-hour, stuff like that. But I have to reduce my risk very quickly either way, but I am very much so favoring the bearish side of things right now. Let me just catch up on the chat again. Are you selling any spot or waiting for Q4 for the cycle theory? I was mentioning earlier, and in my previous stream, I actually did move around a bunch of funds. I sold a bunch of my Bitcoin up at 110K for this reason, as well. Some of it ended up going into things like Hype and Ethereum, and also even some micro caps, some of it into stable coins, just so that I can buy back if this gets invalidated. I can just buy some of my spot Bitcoin back. but I still hold a good chunk of it. I still hold most of it. But I just wanted to make sure I pay myself, because you know what? Basically, one main thing that I often have in the back of my mind while I'm trading, because a lot of people will ask me, "Oh, Stu, I'm in this position. Do you think I should close it or take profits?" The way I see it, if I'm ever looking at my profits and I think, if this totally round trips on me and I lose it all, am I going to be upset? If I'm going to be upset, the answer is yes. At that point, I need to start taking some profits, right? And that's kind of how I felt with this, that I've been bullish on Bitcoin from between, I think it was 18K or 20K. It was below 20K. I know that much, but I was bullish and rode this whole thing. So for me to, you know, if I just round trip this and ride an entire bear market back down without taking any profits on a chart pattern that I have back tested vigorously and I haven't been able to shut up about in these live streams and in my Telegram and stuff, if I completely ignored all my own analysis and got wrecked, I would be so disappointed in myself. So I have been taking some profits along the way. I shouldn't even say along the way, I guess, just more so recently. The RSI on the weekly and monthly tells all the story. I agree. You know, I wasn't looking at the RSI on the monthly, but even this momentum indicator, basically a beefed up RSI, honestly. You know, it's a little concerning there. And the weekly, as I mentioned, I mean, again, just to break down this theory, if we are, you know, if we had a shit ton of buying pressure, right? Because the RSI stands for relative strength index. If we set this high when we had a ton of strength in an uptrend, and now we're attacking that same level of resistance we couldn't break last time, and we have significantly less strength, why would a parabolic run be guaranteed? Now, don't get me wrong. If we do something like this, if we have the RSI, something like that, so we have that divergence that I'm talking about, we see a little rejection, but the RSI goes back into overbought conditions, I'm going to be very bullish. At that point, that just looks like a shit ton of buying strength came back into the market. And I think it's very likely that we end up going on a little run at that point, but we just don't have it yet, right? The RSI, we just have less strength. We're not overbought. We don't have a ton of strength in an uptrend anymore. So, you know, it is what it is. We just have less strength at a similar level that we could not break last time with more strength. That's just the easiest way to break down an RSI divergence. And again, it's not so much that I take every divergence as concrete evidence, but it's the very specific overextended, as far as a double top, overextended territory down to that 70 level, just like on the bullish side of things, that oversold conditions up to the 30 level, basically. That would be the divergence on the other side of things. So yeah, you know, I just, again, guys, obviously, you know, do what works for you, make your own decisions and all that sort of good stuff, but just be careful out there. Please don't fall into an echo chamber. That goes for both sides of things, because at the end of the day, all that matters is how you're actually executing your trades. It doesn't matter how you're analyzing things. I mean, analyzing obviously helps, but your analysis and your predictions really don't mean jack squat unless you know how to trade it. Can I check AI XBT? I sure can. 1 second. You the best. Oh, shucks. Thanks. 125K in August and 200K October, then enter bear market. I personally disagree with you strongly on that one, but I would love to see it at the same time. Please make it happen. The 3-month RSI, when it turns in overbought, has shown the end of the bull market. There is a huge wick on the 3-monthly candle too. That to me looks bearish enough for me. Interesting. I've never actually looked at the 3-month. I'm not going to bring it up right now, but I am going to check that out after my stream here. Actually, here. Let's remove a few things. You said the 3-month. Now, one thing with you know what? The 3-month looks better than the weekly, in my opinion, because it's actually an overbought territory. So there's actually still a lot of strength there. And as well, we are sitting above that resistance level, but that's the same on the weekly. So yeah, we'll have to see. I just haven't looked at the 3-month very much. But the fact that if this drops out of overbought territory again, I think she's gonna be lights out. Let me just reload my weekly chart here. There we go, back to normal here. AI XBT, I said I would look at. Oh, BloFin has it perfectly. Perfect. What time frame are you looking at for AI XBT? Actually, I'm going to check out a few different time frames. I'm going to start zoomed out to the daily. First thing that I notice is obviously we broke a nice downtrend, but we've also broke the uptrend since. 4 hour, let's see what we can find. To me, this looks kind of like a BART, you know, the classic. Oh, good, I have the yellow marker out too. Kind of looks to me like we might go for a little tumble, and if that happens, you know, I'd be looking for same thing, right? Different time frame, same type of chart structure. I would not be all too surprised to see us come down to this fib level. One thing that would maybe cancel that is if we did something like this. Let's say the price, you know, set some lower lows, lower highs, but then we end up breaking that trend early, right? If I had something like this here, we have a low, lower low, that would confirm this as the lower high, the highest point between the two. If we end up breaking structure like that and then getting a pullback, notice that was just an eyeball, but I assume that's the 786. Yeah, basically perfectly. That is the kind of structure that I would consider looking for swing longs once again on something like that, because it's obviously broke the uptrend that it had, right? And that being said, I mean, just to really zoom or to really show that for you, or to map it out, here we had our high. This is where we broke it and had our higher high. That means the lowest point between the two was our higher low on the trend. And notice that we have since broke that. So even if we end up bouncing, we have to consider the possibility that a bounce may be short-lived. Well, actually, that would be a very nice move to the upside. That would be 50% from here if it were to happen that way. But now that we've broke that structure that I was just talking about, it's a little more risky looking for those parabolic moves, I guess, because it has broke some significant structure there. Let me check a couple indicators. AI charting tools, same thing. So this AI charting tools is printing some lower lows. We even set a new lower low here that hasn't confirmed yet by printing a signal, but even the lower high here, I mean, just a ton, all these overlapping red boxes. So these are supply zones, basically resistance, order blocks, whatever. And yeah, just notice that they're overlapping up here. There's just, even if we bounce from here, there's obviously some resistance along the way. So not looking ideal in my opinion. Same with the trend master. Notice that we have a lower sell signal here, although we had one back here and that one got invalidated pretty quickly. But here so far it's looking like this sell trend is still holding so far. Another thing to consider, even though this one failed with the lower sell signal there, notice that we still had higher buy signals. So there was a bit of conflicting signals there. Whereas now we have a lower buy signal followed by a lower sell signal on the MDX Trendmaster, which is my favorite indicator. The MDX Trendmaster and the RSI are my favorite indicators, honestly. So yeah, obviously we have resistance of this indicator kind of chasing the price to the downside. So I would want to see us break at least that 20 cent level before I got bullish, or pull back to support, right? Either or. I'm going to zoom right in. Let's hop over to a 5-minute. This setup has already played out that I was looking at here. We may have had a STUBER fib right here. It looks very close, very slightly front run, never quite hits the 786. But that was a valid setup. Depending how much you front run your fibs by, that may have been a setup that you were able to get into, because we broke this. So, and again, guys, I know that I look at structure and I micro analyze sometimes. That's the way that is how I come up with my STUBER fib pulls, is by micro analyzing. And then after the structure breaks, doing those, looking for those pullbacks, those retracements. And guys, just the fact we had this little green candle here, so we did find a little support there, but we went significantly lower. So that means this white line here was the lower high on the micro trend, right? Because it was the highest point between this and where we dropped to. So at that point, that's where, again, I can look for those fibs. And like I said, it was front run, but that was the first sign there, basically, that things may reverse there. I want to bring up the trend master indicator. We are still holding this buy signal, still holding this support. So yeah, you know what? Maybe we do end up climbing as long as this trend can hold support. Basically, I wouldn't want to see us lose these lows around 14.2 cents, somewhere in there. But yeah, as far as the shorter time frame goes, I think it's got room to go to the upside yet. Hype, like I said, I did want to zoom in on that one a little bit. I do not have a new long open, and I am disappointed in myself because I can see a perfect textbook STUBER fib setup right here. Obviously, that's Captain Hindsight, and it's already played out. If you were able to catch that, congratulations, because it was basically textbook perfect. But that's why, guys, you know, that's where there's some value in my Telegram channel, where I just share so many of these setups, and whether they're in the past, the future, the present, whatever, the more you see it, the more your eye is going to be drawn to it. And just notice that what happened here is we obviously broke this downtrend here. I mean, you could even micro analyze and call it low, lower low, another lower low, and another lower low. But either way, any of these levels that you treated as your lower high on the micro trend, it was broken. That's all there is to it. And at that point, that's where, again, I'm not so much interested in FOMOing into breakouts, right? I'm not interested in FOMOing like that. I want to see structure breaks followed by that pullback into the optimal long pocket. For me, anyways, that's the pocket that I love trading. Probably basically 95% of my trades are based on the STUBER fibs, right? There's nothing all that magical or crazy to them, honestly. The main thing that they really help, in my opinion anyways, what they really help with is fighting that FOMO into those breakout positions that often lead to us getting wrecked, especially if you're trading with leverage, especially high leverage. Is so often after you break structure like this, you see that pullback. And that doesn't mean that it was a failed anything. It just means that, hey, we broke structure. Now let's retest support. Boom. That support level on this breakout here, that's a mom to dad fit right there. That's a good one. Textbook. Sui, yeah, sure, I'll check out Sui. So yeah, basically with hype here, obviously, like I said, this setup has come and gone. I'm not in it. Hopefully some of you guys just happen to catch it on your own. That would be fantastic. Adrian, there's a good chance you would have, because I know we trade very similar. But yeah, I am not in that, unfortunately. Sui, let's check out Sui. I haven't looked at Sui in quite some time. Well, guys, same thing. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, didn't. But again, just to show you how the market is drawn to get that, at least a test off that sort of fib level. And again, there's nothing crazy here. It's just that we broke some structure, right? We had this green candle here. So we had this low and we went lower, lower, low. Even if you wanted to consider it this one here, right? Same thing. Again, either way, we broke structure and then eventually pulled back to the 786, 886 fib pocket. So that's really the, the bread and butter of this strategy is just, it's reminding you, wait for those pullbacks, then you have a nice tight invalidation, right? Rather than, FOMOing in at the top of this pump, for example, and your invalidation being way down here. I mean, that's a big loss versus if you can ladder into a position, something like so, that will bring your average entry significantly closer to your invalidation. So it really tightens up that risk, because at the end of the day, the most important part of trading is protecting your capital. That's why, like I said, I often, I'll take partial profits on a position, consider it a scalp. And if it turns into a runner or a swing position, then fantastic. I'm not banking on home run trades, but I will absolutely take them if they happen. So in a case like this, for example, had you been on the ball and you ended up catching this, then yeah, entering at the 786, you hit your 0.5 target for a quarter, you hit your 214 target for a quarter, and then you have half a position running with the break-even stop, and you have a nice running position at this point, risk-free. Very stress-free position to be in at that point with minimal risk on a scalp size scale, right? And that's the same as how my shorts started on Bitcoin. Up way at these levels back here. It all started as basically scalp positions, playing the range first, and then half the position took off. At this point, I'm nibbling on profits, so I only have quarter of each running. But they started the same. They just turned into nice running positions. I didn't know it was going to happen for sure. It just worked out with minimal risk. Ave or Ave, I'm not sure even how to pronounce it. I forget. Oh man, I haven't looked at this one for a while. I haven't owned it since last cycle. I definitely did well on that one last cycle. Ave, that's a nasty one. That is a nasty one. On the 5 minute, both these setups, they are going to be hindsight. So understand that these have already played out. But again, I just want to show them to you as an example, is just, looking at structure here. Let's just say, breaking that downtrend, pulling our fib. We went slightly lower, but you would have hit 3 laddered entries, right? Your 786, 886, your double bottom territory, you would have hit your 0.5 fib, your 214 fib, and then the rest would be risk-free either way. But also, on that being said, notice that there was this little liquidity grab down here. So although that bullish STUBER wasn't invalidated yet, and it did end up playing out, notice we also got a bearish one out of that. So that's where being able to microanalyze it, like especially as a scalper, it really comes in handy, right? That we did technically have a lower low. That means the highest point between the two would be our confirmed lower high, or just the high of the swing, whatever. Pulling a fib from there. And I mean, I know you already know what I'm looking at, but pulling the fib from that lower high down to where we bottomed there, and notice what happened there, right? You'd already have hit your first target really quick, even would have got a second one there if you wanted to play it again. But we're getting very close to the second target on that as well. So again, I know it's too late to play those setups, but again, that's just, typical structure for how I like to pull those fibs. And obviously I can't be looking at every chart on all time frames at all times or anything like that. But it's a very, important lesson to learn about structure like that. And guys, if you do want more examples of how I pull fibs, how I look at structure, how I just approach the charts from nothing but a technical analysis perspective, I don't give a shit about fundamentals and headlines and tweets. I trade charts, not tweets. Copyright StuTube. But yeah, if you want to learn more of that, see more examples, that sort of stuff, do yourselves a favor, scan the QR code or follow the link in the description down below. But let's zoom out on this one a little bit. Let me just erase some drawings. I'm not sure what time frame you are looking at. Everybody trades different time frames. We're getting near a support level. I'll give it that. This is a messy one because unfortunately we had a higher high and we lost that structure. Had we not had that, I would have been very confident pulling a bullish STUBER fib from down here, because if we had this as our high and this as our higher high and then pulled back, that's very clean structure. There's no mess in between. It would just be a very direct high, higher high, and then we would have this higher low in between. And that's where I'd be looking at pulling the fib. Right? Something like this. But since we went a little higher, things got a little bit messy, but that doesn't necessarily mean the end of the world, right? Like I said, we are obviously at support. If anything, support is support until it's broken. And we are currently hovering right along the 786 on the 4 hour. What's the, I guess that 5-minute chart, we already had that bounce. What is the trend master saying on this? So we do have a sell signal. However, it is a higher sell signal, right? So I think what I would wait for this one, well, for me personally, I guess obviously not everyone has this indicator. But if I see us reclaim this blue sell signal here, this blue line moving average here, if we reclaim that, flip it back to pink and get a higher buy signal, I will feel better about the bullish trend at that point, just because the indicator would be agreeing that we're still in an uptrend at that point, basically. But yeah, definitely a level worth watching here. Again, I haven't traded this coin in literally like 4 years. I haven't been following it closely at all. But just at a quick glance, that's kind of what I'm seeing. If we don't hold that level, that's basically where I would be waiting for one of two things. One would be we lose this structure and keep setting, lower lows, lower highs, but eventually break that structure, followed by a pullback, right? Just like I mentioned earlier. Something like that. Because of a structure break like this. At that point, I would again gain confidence in the bulls on something like that. Other than that, if we do just lose this support here and start dumping, that's where I'm going to the start of the swing. Something like that. But again, chances are that we would see some sort of a structure break on a shorter time frame, on just a smaller trend or whatever, in which case there's, even if we would get down to this level, there would be very, very likely some large bounces and some nice positions to get into both directions, honestly. But yeah, if we straight nuke, this is kind of the level I'd be looking at. The 786 would be around 160 US dollars. The 886 would be around 138 US dollars. Obviously significantly lower than what we're at right now, but we do still possibly have support where we are right now. Support is support until it's broken. But like I said, I wish this was slightly cleaner without this next wick above. It would make me feel much better about this fib support pocket here, but unfortunately we don't always get what we want. And that obviously affects my position sizing when I get into things too, right? The cleaner the setup, the more points I have adding up for the trade setup I'm looking for, then it's going to be a heavier position. If I'm still wanting to take a position because of a few things, but there's a couple things standing out as warnings to me, then I'm obviously going to downsize my position significantly. So BTC looks like we are still trying to dump a little bit, which is great for my shorts. Yeah. Has anyone commented on the fact that BlackRock bought 6,000 BTC yesterday, 600 million in one day? Love to see it. However, something to consider is they have so much money and so much money coming in constantly that they do have the money to be buying constantly on the way down and also playing the swings, even if they think that, hey, just like me, hey, I think the market, it's possible that we bounce for whatever reason, we're at support, whatever, they can buy it and then they can still sell it again. right? Or they can leverage it. There's so many different ways they could end up playing that. But honestly, it's good, right? It's great to know that those big players are interested and that they are buying. But until the chart structure actually matches up with that, just like what I was talking about with the war and stuff, is I don't really trade on fundamentals, like, based on BlackRock buying, for example. Great to acknowledge and great to know that the interest is there, but I'm not going to trade bullishly just because they do that if the structure is still to the downside is all, because they might be hoping for significantly lower, because chances are they're doing a bit of a DCA, dollar cost averaging, whatever. They're going to be buying, if the price goes down to, let's just throw out some ridiculous numbers like 60K, they're still going to be making those massive buys. But that is good. Thank you for sharing that, because I honestly didn't know. But again, I don't really follow fundamentals at all. I just look at the colorful charts and trade them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Notice I'm getting so good at that, I think. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. Yeah, exactly. They can just keep making those buys. They'll have more money coming in, and they have so much money, they control everything. So yeah, they'll keep buying if it goes down. Yeah. Anyways, guys, I think that's about all I wanted to go over today. So if you did find this stream useful, again, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And as I mentioned, if you want access to my private Telegram channel where I share some of my theories, some of my trade setup ideas, just my overall thoughts on the markets in general, there is a scannable QR code as well as a link down below for that in the description. And yeah, like I said, there's just been also BloFin, giving you guys, those of you who sign up under me, those of you guys who are already in my Telegram, the BloFin is currently running this promo for about another week here. But yeah, guys, the last couple days, I know I've been gone for the last little bit. Sorry, I was at a kite surfing event for a few days there, so I haven't really been in the charts all that much, but I'm back. I came back aggressively yesterday. I think I shared like 3 or 4 trade setups just in the last day or two, and haven't lost one since being back. Knock on wood. Obviously I will, and I do lose trades, I promise you. I'm not going to pretend I don't. However, they're always controlled, because trading isn't about winning every trade. It's also about controlling the losses that you do take, so that you can come back with a level head and just be able to continue trading back-tested strategy of yours, right? So including this legend, hopefully he sees this. Again, I know I posted some of these the other day, but this legend, somebody that I've been talking with personally for about a year now, but he is, catching on to the STUBER fibs very nicely. Absolutely insane profits, guys. This is in less than a week. So absolutely ridiculous. So great to see that. Great to see the feedback from people learning my strategy and that sort of thing. So yeah, if you do appreciate what I have to tell you, do me a favor. Like I said, smash that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss these streams. Scan the QR code if you want more examples and more of my thoughts on the market. With that, thank you all so much for being here with me. I really appreciate you guys being here and me being able to talk through my thoughts. So with that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Peace.